Carl, we get to talk to you after a Giants win. And not only that, the defense was excellent yesterday. What was the key when the Raiders were getting into the red zone, and what were the Giants doing that was able to thwart them so well?
Well, I think it was a combination of coverage and just more. I think it was more about their effort and their commitment to the game plan. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen, there's a trend right now. The league is a copycat league, and all the high-scoring offenses are all of a sudden in the low double digits. You know, Kansas City for 2 weeks in a row, the Rams scored, Buffalo, so teams are saying, you know what? We're going to play some cover 2. We're going to play some cover 4. We're going to legislate against your best receiver getting matched up on a safety running across the field. And you combine that with the impatience of offenses. And this is and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about would the Giants play to their profile, right? And there are teams in this league that want to play to a certain profile but refuse to adjust. And that being said, like a Kansas City or even the Rams last night, they wanted the big shot, couldn't get it, not patient enough to just take what the defense was giving them, because for those guys, if you get into a 10-play drive, there's going to be a mistake somewhere. But teams that know how to stay in that profile of what they need to be, they'll take a 10-play drive and just tell those guys, hey, no penalties. We'll get the ball in the end zone if they keep giving us, these 10 and 12 yarders. So what the Giants have done the last couple of weeks, they found out what teams want to do. And it sounds simple, right? Well, they want to do this, so you have to do that. But you also have to marry that with your available personnel. And so with the Giants, they conceded some run plays, but they weren't going to concede big plays in the passing game. Darren Waller, who's their best receiver and one of the best in the game at tight end, he had 92 yards receiving, but he was their number one pass catcher. So he's held under 100 yards. Last week, Tyreek Hill held under 100 yards. So they had, they were compiling the Raiders. They had 400 yards of offense, but they had no points to show for it. Mm-hmm. So when you can legislate against what they want to do, it results in turnovers for that team, and matching up the right way, just based on what's available to you personnel-wise, they were able to keep them out of the end zone, but they also were really good on third down. That was the key for the Giants, to play really well on third down.
Yeah, and they were great.
What about 4 for 12? The Raiders were on third down.
What about the offense and the game plan going in, and the offensive output coming out of that game, Carl?
If there's ever an example of a team playing to its profile, right? I read a lot after the game and then this morning about how Garrett was too conservative and he was holding the receivers back. And I'm like, wait, let's just look at what what can they do and what can't they do, right? They can't protect the passer. And so you don't want in Njuke, or whatever his name is, Ngakwe and
Max Crosby on the other side. Yeah.
Two of the best pass rushers in the league in terms of getting hits on the quarterback and making things. You don't want to turn those guys loose. You don't want to expose yourself to that. So what the Giants said, we're going to run the football because the Raiders don't stop the run very well. They're a poor run defense. So we're going to run it. We're going to utilize the tight ends, and occasionally we'll use our wide receivers. That's the sacrifice you have to make in a game like this, because you know what you aren't. Smart coaches will realize what they aren't and then build on what they can do. And they looked at what was available personnel-wise, and then they got with those coaches and they said, we got to run the football and we got to use these tight ends. This is going to be our path to victory, and rely on our defense.
Fair. Now, you look at Garrett on the whole here, Carl. Maggie and I, we take ton of calls looking at Garrett as a play caller. How would you grade out or look at the job that Jason has done here as offensive coordinator over the last year plus?
Oh, it's been mixed. It's been a mixed bag. I mean, there are some things that leave you scratching your head. And then you have to also look at production in certain areas, right? They are not a very good red zone defense. Offense. They were not a very good red zone offense last year, and you couldn't put points on the board. So, I mean, if you're an offensive coordinator, you've got to figure those things out. So it's been mixed. If you're just judging on pure statistics, there are a lot of things that will leave you scratching your head, but I'm not here to campaign for or against a coordinator keeping his job. It's still games to play. And the end result will probably determine whether or not, a lot of people in the organization continue to be employed.
Well, Carl, and that's one of the things we've been talking about this morning, which is, as crazy as it is, and I know because I saw you on Twitter and this was just hilarious that we were talking about sort of the playoffs being live here for the Giants. It's about,
yeah,
and Carl
I commented
tweeted,
on that.
Remove me from this thread, which is just amazing. But statistically, and you look at the schedule, and I don't want to do a Mike and Dog win-loss, but there are games there to be won, right? And I feel like the organization is at a crossroads offensively, where you can, if you wanted to, make a change here. And I'm not asking you to fire Jason Garrett. I'm just saying you could make a change here and start to go down a path of to be aggressive in this move and make a change while you have Freddie Kitchens on your staff, and maybe chart a new course here for this team offensively while you have something to play for real.
So there are two comments to that. The first, I will say, it's a week-to-week proposition in NFL. I said that a few weeks when I was on with you guys. Mm-hmm. Anything can change in terms of who's available to their team, right? The second part of that change in offensive philosophy can come whether or not there's Jason Garrett on the staff or not. The head coach just has to say, I need more of an influence of X, Y, and Z, right? So it's just a general rule, and I get where you guys are coming from, but as a general rule, I don't advocate for people that have jobs losing their jobs. Their performance will dictate that. So if there's a change made, so be it. If not, I know that they can change without changing the personnel if they so choose to do that. Sure. But to your point, there seems to be some things that the Giants do well, and you can see an influence of that's not part of what you're used to seeing from Jason Garrett. So I think the Freddie Kitchens influence, I don't know how much it is or his input, but his presence is there because you can see the way they ran the football yesterday was probably something that either if Freddie didn't have input into that plan, I'm sure he was very happy to see it. Because they had to line up and they had to use what was available, and they did it extremely well. And they protected Nate Solder, who we all know struggles in pass pro. Yep. But he was road grading yesterday. Hernandez did a good job. They had guys that were really getting physical. So when they had to pass pro, they got exposed a couple of times on the Daniel Jones fumble. But in pass pro, when you can play action, when you're running the ball well, it takes so much pressure off of an offensive line that just doesn't hold up against certain pass rushers.
Carl, what do you see when you look at Jones, the quarterback? If the line is there and you could trust the offensive line to protect, do you think this coaching staff trusts Jones as a thrower?
100% they trust him as a thrower. I look, if you want to take an exhibit A of Jones as the thrower, the front pylon throw to Evan Ingram was as good as you can get.
Oh, it's beautiful.
That was nice.
I mean, that right there tells you he has the requisite skills. And I'll say this, and I'll contrast this. Clearly, he has more games under his belt than Jordan Love. But when you look at some of the misses that Jordan Love had, back shoulder throws, overthrows, things like that, that's not what Daniel Jones does. he's got good ball placement. He throws a nice football. So it's just a matter of him being more consistent. He has that one play a game, and then he recovers from it, which is always a good thing. And luckily, that one play a game has happened early in the last two contests as opposed to something that would have decided the game.
Carl, just expanding it out beyond the Giants for a second, like yesterday was totally weird. Weird day in the NFL. A lot of favorites going down hard. Obviously, my Bills took one on the chin. They took a 1-2 right to the face. The offense did, that's for sure. Out of the Bills, out of the Cowboys losing yesterday, looking awful against the Denver Broncos. Obviously, the Rams last night, maybe not to the same extent. What was the most alarming loss to you yesterday? We know anything can happen in the NFL, but which loss do you think showed that there are some deeper-seated problems with one of these teams?
Well, I don't know if it's deeper-seated, but I think the most shocking was Dallas. Because Dallas was playing so well, and I think they'll rebound from this. I think they got a slice of humble pie because I just think they are as good as advertised. Deeper seated problems. Cincinnati was overrated, but they played well. So you give them credit where it's due. But then, they get against a team that says, okay, we're just going to make this a fist fight and see how you fare. And they didn't do too well. So, Cincinnati was kind of a shocker because I thought they would be more competitive in that game, but the one that was just totally uncharacteristic was the Dallas Cowboys.
Carl, I want to get back to kind of offensive philosophy you mentioned before. Guys, teams like say the Kansas City Chiefs, perfect case example. Mahomes, they're used to the big plays. They're not getting the big plays. They're frustrated. They don't want to take the short passing. Why the lack of adjustment here from what is a really good staff with Reed and Bieniemy as a play caller, Mahomes? We know the skill position players are there. Why their inability or, I guess, pushback on being able to take what the defense is willing to give them and continuing to try and be what they were for the last 3 years?
Stubbornness, arrogance. If you followed Andy Reid, even when he was in Philadelphia, he does not like to make adjustments. His playbook is his religion. That's his Bible. Like, he'll make an adjustment that works within what he continues to try to do. But, I mean, there were years when he had McNabb and people were like, why don't you move your receivers, put them in motion? He's like, nope, we're going to stand there. And I think when the Patriots beat him up so good, that's when he decided, well, I think I should make a change. But they're so committed to what they're doing, and hats off to him because he's one of the most successful coaches in football. But when more than one team has your number and you go from scoring 30 points a game to struggling to score 13, you got to look at this different. Mm-hmm. And the impatience, and see, this is him, and it's his quarterback and it's his coordinator. There's nothing wrong with a 10 or 12 play drive, right? But for them, they needed to be 75 yards and touchdown, because if they get a 12-play drive and it ends up in a field goal, that's defeating for them. But that's how you have to play until teams stop legislating against what you're trying to do.
Giants healthier coming out of the bye as they get set to take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensively. Make the argument maybe Thomas is back, Saquon back with that ankle injury. You think this offense is a lot more explosive down the stretch than what we've seen here first half of the season, first 9 games, Carl?
I think so. I think just given the tools that they have enough playmakers to really make some explosive plays. I don't think they're going to get out of their character to say, okay, we're going to be empty formation and just turn it loose, because you just can't. The offensive line, even with Thomas, they still struggle with the end tackle twist. They just haven't figured it out. Yesterday, Matt Pert thought it was a twist, and he just turned the end loose on the quarterback. It was just like he's looking inside. I'm like, well, it didn't communicate, but he just guessed that it was going to be a twist, and the end just kept going up the field. So they're going to be explosive in their own way. They can create some explosive plays, but I don't think we're going to see this Giant offense go empty too much.
Mm-hmm. Carl, enjoy the bye week. Always appreciate it. We'll talk to you on the other side. And
got it.
hopefully we're talking about more Giants winning here in the second half of the season. Thank you.
Remove me from this thread.
Please remove me from the thread. This is my favorite Carl Banks reply to any tweet we've ever sent. Moose and I were like, the back door's open. The Giants get in the playoffs. Just remove me from this thread, please. I love you, Carl. All right, we got to take a quick break.